Hello and welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans watch the best and worst horror films of all time and have a lovely talk about them. And sometimes we do a bonus episode where we talk about upcoming films, films at festivals, and talk to the makers of those films. And this is one of those occasions. My name is Andy Conduit-Turner, and I am joined today by someone I think regular listeners will be familiar with. He is the writer, director of films including Ibiza Undead, a section of the Midnight Peep Show, Punch, and now Rumpelstiltskin. Andy Edwards. Andy, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, very well indeed. Nice to see you again. We did see each other briefly when we were sat across the aisle at FrightFest Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, right? When Rumpelstiltskin, the film we were talking about today, had your is it your UK or your world premiere at FrightFest
It was the
Glasgow?
world premiere. It was the second audience only to see it. We'd done a cast and crew screening in London, and yeah, that was the
Yeah.
main world premiere for
And
us.
few nicer places to have it than up in Glasgow, right? When you've got loads of other
Exactly.
films going on as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Beautiful cinema, fun festival. So perfect place.
I mean, while we're here talking about Fright Fest Glasgow, I know you were there with your cast and some of your crew members ready to do your world premiere, but did you get a chance to catch many other films while you were there, or was it all work?
It was largely just kind of marshalling the cast and crew, to make sure they were all in the right place at the right time, doing interviews and things. But yeah, no, I did see a few things. What did I see? I saw House of Ashes, which is where I
Yes.
bumped into you, and I saw, is it called By the Throat?
By the
With
Throat, yes, that was the one about the care assistant that moves in with that
yeah,
family,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that was good fun. So those were the only two things I saw. I really wanted to see the short films. Some of the cast and crew did go and see the shorts, and they said they were really good.
Yeah, some of the short films were really fun. I think and it was a good bunch, so it's not shade on the others. I think Pumpkin Guts was maybe my favorite of the one. That
Yeah,
is
I
on
heard good
YouTube right
things
now,
about
so
that
if you
one.
want to catch up on
Oh,
that, that's nice and easy to do. But yeah, there were some really good things on display. And then yeah, as you say, we spoke about House of Ashes just after we finished it. We met with a couple of the cast members later on as well. Um, a good little bunch, and it's a nice little warm up as we get towards the festival season for the year as well, right?
yes, yeah, yes. I ended up drinking with the House of Ashes gang, on several occasions actually,
Yeah.
and yeah, all lovely people. So I wish them a lot of luck with that film as it
Yeah,
as its journey.
in, indeed. But of
I mean,
course,
that's one of the good things about festivals and Fright Fest in particular, that there's kind of no barrier between fans and filmmakers. There's no kind of red velvet rope which
yeah,
you're on the other side of. Um, you can go and you can talk to the filmmakers, and the filmmakers will go out to the same drinks and the same pubs and after parties and everything as everybody else. Um, so you can genuinely be like, "Oh, I like that film," and then you can go and just talk to that person.
yeah,
Because I've been at Fright Fest, with films, but if I don't have a film, I will still go anyway.
yeah. It's always worth it, right?
Watch stuff, meet people, um, and I've kind of through that got to know a lot of people. So even if I don't have a film playing, there will be films by people that I do know who are playing. So you want to go and support them and support British horror in particular.
Yeah, and I think we have like a really nice community just from the people that we speak to at events and the people that we see turning up in each other's films. And I think a lot of shared expertise. I think networks like Fright Fest has probably driven a lot of people to say, "Oh, I've met this person at this event, and maybe they have some advice on this particular piece." I know when we spoke with Chris and Annabella, who feature in roles in Rumpelstiltskin as well. I know you've supported them with some of the production work on their film, The Death of Us, as well, right?
Yeah, and yeah, those Chris and Bella are great, and they are in Rumpelstiltskin, and yeah, they're just in the process of writing, directing, shooting their first feature film. So yeah, any help I can give. They've got quite a lot of the Rumpelstiltskin crew on there actually, um, because yeah, if you're on a film set, they were on as actors, but they were obviously looking, oh, that person's good, that person's good. to go onto their film. And I think, yeah, any help we can give each other in terms of advice on the shooting, but then also recommendations. People come to you, go, oh, do you know a good person for this, good person for that? And I think it's super useful, and we
Yeah.
should do as much of it as we can because we're not in competition with each other. Um, we have to kind of grow the British horror scene as a whole, and the more we can do that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Having those recommendations so you know the people who are one, good at their job and what their skill set is, but then secondarily, maybe even more importantly, people who are nice to work with, you know, have an infinite value, right?
Oh, 100%. And Chris and Bella tick those boxes. You know, hire them, everybody, because not only are they great actors, but on set they were Chris was like fetching me cups of tea at like 1 in the morning in a forest,
And
and I
that
was
is the
like,
most
dude, you
important
don't
skill, of
have to
course.
do this. You've done your lines. You can go home. You can sit in the green room. You can do whatever. But no, he was like, he wanted to help out, and
Excited and involved. And
yeah. And
no,
that's when I was
moving.
like, okay, these guys are going to do well when they put their first feature together. If they're looking after people that well, on a set that's not their set, people are going to want to work for them, even though, I'm sure it's very low budget, not a huge amount of money, but I'm sure they looked after their cast and crew. And, that's an important thing. People want to come back and work for you. Um, and also, when it is 1 in the morning and you're in a forest and it's freezing, doing night shoots, which if you're doing a low budget indie horror, at some point you will be in a forest doing night shoots.
It's the law.
You want people who are going to be good company and not complaining, and yeah, people who are there in the trenches with you.
And I mean, we've conjured their names now. Let's talk a little bit. I know that you have an interesting story with the production of your latest film, Rumpelstiltskin, with Chris, who was able to jump in to resolve a scheduling conflict, right? And took a bigger role in the film than you expected at first.
Yes, so when we'd figured out our location issues, which was another issue, we had a location fallout at the last minute. We were going to shoot up north, in Northumberland and Scotland, and then there were issues with that. So we ended up shooting mainly down in the south of England, and a lot of it was down sort of the Winchester, Portsmouth sort of area, which is where Chris and Bella live. And so we kind of cast most of it already a few months previously. But I got them both in because I knew we were in the area to fill kind of smaller roles. Um, and then maybe a couple of weeks before the shoot, um, one of the lead male actors pulled out. Um, Scheduling issues. I think Netflix came in with some big offer or something.
Oh,
Um,
those
as
those dogs.
happened, and it does happen on an indie film, be prepared for Netflix to put someone on a pencil for more money for a day than you can afford for a week. So, I was kind of racking my brains, thinking of who could fill this role at the last minute. And I was like, I just messaged Chris and said, you've got I was going to give you a couple of lines in this movie. You were on set for like 2 days, so I knew he was available for at least some of it. I was like, how do you fancy upping your character quite a bit? And we'd got his measurements because he was going to play a guard, so I knew he would fit into the costume, which was all we'd already got for that character. And he said yes. Moved his work stuff around that he had to do, and jumped in and did a great job.
Yeah, and he really seemed to like I've been lucky enough to see the film. He really dived into that role. I think he did a lot with it. I think he was a really fun and interesting character as part of it as well, amongst a really fun cast and a fun movie. Let's get into Rumpelstiltskin. Because we shouldn't assume. I think it's a very familiar story to the folks like you and us, but you and I, but across the world, Rumpelstiltskin, I think, fairly good penetration. The legend that people know and that you have adapted and I would say expanded on here. Um, what inspired you this story for this story? Is it a fairy story that you were particularly familiar or fond of?
Yeah. So I've got a kid who he's now 8. Um, but when he was younger, I had a book of fairy stories. read him to try and get him to sleep. I don't know, yeah, how much attention he paid. It was, it's more just, trying to get him to sleep at that sort
Yeah,
of age and
hearing
read.
someone talk to you.
Yeah. And you kind of read these stories, and it's a big book like this. It might be somewhere around here actually. And most of them are kind of fun and about talking animals or something. But every now and again, there's one which is about, you know, a magical goblin who tries to eat a child.
Yeah,
And
they do come up.
and you're like, okay, do I skip over this one? Do I not want him to give him nightmares? But I'm a horror filmmaker. I want him to be, you know,
Ready
fully
for this world.
ready for this world of the real life horrors, but also, I want him to enjoy obviously horror movies and stuff when he's older. And so, start them young. So we'd read this story, and it was something that was at the back of my mind. And then because I'm also producer on this as well as writer and director, so as a writer and director, you always want to tell original stories and come up with your own ideas. And as a producer, you're going, what IP can we use? What IP can you use? Um, and I'd done a movie called Cinderella's Revenge 2 years ago now. We shot that. Um, and that was like a director for hire job. But what I really loved about it was the period kind of vibes of it. I'd not done period before.
Yeah, I was about to
I,
ask. I've say, and most of the stuff I've seen from you is all contemporary, right? So a dive into period work.
yeah, I mean, I never, never thought of it mainly because of the budgets that I was working on. The thought of trying to do period on a low budget was pretty terrifying. But we did Cinderella, co-produced by Becky Matthews, who co-produced Rumpelstiltskin. Um, and she pulled off some her usual miracles that she does. And I was like, this is fun because if you're shooting something contemporary and you're in a flat or a cafe and everybody's dressed the same, it's fun not being on set, but it's not the same as when you're in a castle and there's people in ball gowns and you've got horses or knights in armor and stuff. You're like, oh, I'm really making a film here.
Yeah.
It really feels like you're on set. You're there in your hoodie, and then someone comes past, dressed as the queen or something. Um, so I kind of wanted to, so kind of producer head was going IP, we could do periods, and director head was going, oh, what hasn't been done. Um, and rather than doing something like the Winnie the Pooh guys are doing and taking a cute character and making them evil, making them in a slasher, I wanted to take a character who was already creepy and just make him even more creepy.
Yeah. And add
Turn
those
it into
real
a
horror
horror.
elements to it rather than the suggestions of this, I think when you read particularly some versions that are particularly geared towards children, right? It's like, oh, the little goblin man will just take your baby away and,
Yeah,
you know, to live on a farm, perhaps. But
yeah, yeah. On a tasty, tasty farm. So yeah, it's just upping those things because those Brothers Grimm stories, they're folk horror tales, really.
yeah,
They were tales told around the campfire for years, and then they put them all down, and people die horrific deaths and get turned into animals, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens. So yeah, I just wanted to go back to those kind of roots, make it folk horror-y, kind of grungy and medieval and grimy, so you could kind of feel the dirt, and that's the kind of world that I wanted to live in. So when I kind of came up with those two things, I was like, oh, here's an IP that hasn't been used. Here's the approach that we're going to do to it, which is this kind of almost Robert Eggers on a budget of £3.50 kind of
yeah.
vibe, and put those two together, and then Rumpelstiltskin was born.
Wonderful. And, let's talk about the man himself, Rumpelstiltskin. Obviously invested not only heavily in the visual of Rumpelstiltskin, your lead actor has, must have spent a little while in the makeup chair for this one, but also the performance of it as well. I know it was one of our team when we were talking about it on our FrightFest episode.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
think the
had a list of
performance really
them.
stood
Yeah,
out.
and yeah, I know, Emma in particular was talking about how great Joss was, and I know he's very very chuffed with that. Um, because yeah, Joss, who plays Rumpelstiltskin, he's a experienced creature performer, but mostly when he gets to do that, he gets to do a lot of creaturing and not so much kind of dialogue
Yeah.
and acting. Whereas this role combines all of the creature stuff, but with he's got a lot to say.
Yeah, you
With
must have
a lot
one
of
of the
dialogue.
highest dialogue counts in from your entire cast, right? Maybe top two potentially.
Yeah, yeah, I think he's second to Hannah, our lead. Um, so yeah, the process for that was, normally on an indie horror film, you can hide the monster as much
Yeah.
as possible till the end, because monsters are expensive. And if you do that hiding, you can maybe get away with it, so a guy in a mask or something. But because Rumpelstiltskin has so much dialogue, and he's not just a monster, he's a character, um, I knew we needed to go prosthetics. Um, so originally, I spoke to Dan Martin, who's one of the best SFX guys in the UK. He does all the work for Ben Wheatley, Brandon Cronenberg, and a lot of other people. And so we kind of started coming up with the ideas for the character. And he recommended Joss because he'd worked with Joss on a movie called Tarot, which was out last year.
Oh,
And
I saw Taro. He's in that.
Joss plays the devil in that.
Oh, wow.
Um, so he'd worked with him on that, and Dan was like, "Oh, you need a guy to be a weird goblin."
I
I
know
never
just the
played
fella.
a guy. I know just a fella. So he recommended him, and then in the end, Dan couldn't do the shoot days. He was busy working on the Ben Wheatley zombie show. Uh, so he recommended a guy called Will Harvey. Will came on, and we designed the prosthetics. Um, and then Will was on set as well to apply them. And then yeah, that was a 3 hour job each day.
Wow.
Um,
So
so
there was
yeah,
someone bringing him cups of tea as well, then I hope.
well yeah, he had to sit still. And if you've met Joss, then him sitting still is quite hard for him. But then he could obviously channel that latent energy into his performance. Um, but yeah, I mean it's quite a transformation because there's you know 3 hours worth of applying of prosthetics, and this was just to do his head. There's one day we did a full body, and that was 6 hours
Wow. And that's
getting rid.
that's practically a day's work before you've even shot a
Yeah,
single thing, right?
and then it was about an hour to de-rig as well. So yeah, I remember getting sent pictures at like midnight after we'd finished shooting, and they were and Will and Bianca, who is Will's assistant, was scrubbing Joss down in the bath at the Airbnb. They had to scrub him down like each day for an hour. Um, so yeah, it's a commitment. It's a
Yeah.
real commitment to do that kind of performance. But yeah, I mean, so the fact that people are pointing it out and saying how good it is great. Really, it shows that it was worth it
Yeah,
for all of
definitely.
us really to go through that because we wanted to make him a real character. And I think that first time you see Rumpelstiltskin and you see his face and everything, if that doesn't work, then you've kind of lost them. You've
And
lost the film. And if
I
you
think it
don't
really pulled
believe
off
it,
nicely.
then yeah, um, you're in trouble. Then if the first time he comes on, people go, "Oh, that looks dumb."
Yeah, or if it's distracting, you like say, as a character that's so central to the film and is a recurring piece. And I really liked this about the adaptation of the legend because again, you could read the original storybook thing, and Rumpelstiltskin could be almost be a fleeting, he's almost Beetlejuice like maybe in some base tellings of the story where he appears, he disappears, he appears, he disappears. He brings the story onward and he's a central piece of it, but he spends a lot more time here really negotiating what the deal is, like quite some extended discussions there. And as you say, the energy and the movement here, it's clearly not hampered by the prosthesis there, because obviously you could have something where, right, it can make you look this way, but then you can't move or emote
Yeah,
quite so freely. But really skillfully done in that he is still able to be very, very mobile. We do get a lot of a really like range of emotion from because sometimes there are, and I say this absolutely as a compliment, Andy, certainly from my world, but some of the times where he's being a little bit more playful and funny gives you kind of the award-winning actor Warwick Davis kind of energies from his roles like the Leprechaun, some of my
Mm.
favorites. And then there are moments where he is not only sinister or evil, but then you have areas where he is also a threat, or because like a lot of us, everyone's got someone that they work for, right?
Exactly. Everybody's got ultimately got a boss,
Everyone's
haven't
got a
they?
line manager.
Yeah. And and yeah, again, it's about because he's such a central character, he can't be one note because you'd be bored of him.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it has to be up and down. It has to be a proper performance and have different notes in there. Um, which we obviously worked on. We'd managed to luckily do some rehearsals. Incredibly tight shooting schedule, and especially when one of your actors is in makeup for every morning,
yeah,
so it gives you even less time to work with them. Um, and there's other considerations like the contact lenses that he wears can't be worn for a particular long time.
yeah. Your eyes will try out quick as you like, I
Exactly.
imagine. Yeah,
When he had his hands done, he couldn't eat because he couldn't pick anything up. People had to like feed him drinks with a straw or something. So that all these kind of sorts of considerations that kind of go into like his workload, but then also your scheduling of the movie.
yeah,
So we had to be very tight on that and shoot all the scenes without him in the morning. So it wasn't a case of, oh well, 20 people waiting for the makeup to be done. It was right, okay, we've got all these shots with all the other characters to do in the morning. Then as soon as he's ready, get him on, shoot all his stuff, then get him off because he's got another hour at the end of the day to
yeah.
de-rig, and then we can shoot a bit more.
Some bits that he's not in. I think these are things that maybe people forget when they watch a movie, and I'm sure anyone who that we talk to or think about a little bit more, you must think, yeah, of course there is a scheduling thing. But I think certainly when you're growing up and you first start watching movies, you can almost imagine that they go, okay, right, scene one, and then and then
Yeah,
you're filming these things almost chronologically. But actually, it's a delicate jigsaw puzzle you're playing, right?
absolutely. And yeah, the dream would always be to shoot chronologically because it's much easier to get your head as director, much easier for the actors, much easier for continuity. But the reality is you can't often.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I've ever shot anything chronologically. Um, so you have to kind of shoot out of sequence depending on locations and things like prosthetics. And obviously it's difficult for Hannah as well, who plays our lead, Evelina. She, without giving too much away, she plays her character from kind of late teenage years to her mid 20s, and she goes from being the miller's daughter to the queen. So she has this kind of huge amount to do, and we were jumping back and forwards. She was having to go change her performance, depending on where she
change
was
her
in the
performance,
story.
change her look, change like quite a
Yeah,
lot about herself, even like the way she
yeah.
speaks and so on.
So yeah, yeah. Our makeup artist, she had everything down in a big book. Like this scene was from this time, so her hair was going to be like this, and yeah. Um, a lot of planning goes in um, to something like this, and especially with the period stuff. I love shooting it, but there's obviously extra challenges.
Yeah.
You can't just go, oh, balls, let's go to Primark and pick up this bit of costume, or to Asda to pick up this prop, or oh, let's just go and shoot in the street. Everything has to be planned, everything has to be bought or hired or made. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I
you,
mean, and
everything has to be thought about. If you don't have the thing on the day, you haven't got it.
yeah, it catches out the best of people as well. I know when Nosferatu came out, we went back and we watched even the 70s retelling of the Nosferatu story, and it had passed me by, but when we were talking about it, Ben noted that there are television aerials on those roofs. And I think there was some double yellow, like, so if you
Yeah,
have hugely comparatively budgeted productions which can be caught out by these things in period pieces. You have to walk an incredibly delicate and
yeah,
tricky line that you don't think of necessarily.
yeah. I'm sure some people will spot some things in Rumpelstiltskin, but most of what we shot was shot in genuinely 500 years old buildings. There's a little bit of a set build there, but most things were shot places that are genuinely about 500 years old. So you get your production value there. And, they're kind of largely untouched, but then there's still things like television aerials, light switches is a
Yeah,
big one,
real light switches
automated
and
light switches.
electrics. Yeah.
So yeah, we've done a lot of there's there's a surprising amount of little CG just wiping out light switches
Yeah.
uh, and drain pipes, plastic drain pipes.
Yeah, it's
So
incredible these things because I say, like, I guess even in a castle that is absolutely period to when you're filming, they will have still have had to modernize to a degree to
yeah,
make sure they don't fall down.
exactly. They've got fire alarms, they've got electric lights, and yeah, plastic drain pipes. Just things just to kind of
Health and
so
safety
make
signs
live
dotted
health
around
and
the building,
safety, yeah, livable in, and then you have to try and shoot around it, or yeah,
or
get
get your
somebody to
VFX guys
get
to like,
somebody
can
to
you?
paint it out
Yeah.
of each shot. So yeah, the bedroom scenes in the film were shot in a museum called Anne of Cleves Museum.
Oh wow.
So it's Anne of Cleves House, and that's in Lewes in Sussex. So it was a house bought for Anne of Cleves by Henry VIII. Although she never actually lived there. I think she died before she lived there or something. But it's a kind of they've kind of preserved it and everything's still exactly the same, apart from yeah, there's these electric light switches everywhere. So there's about probably 20 shots in the movie we had to get rid of the electric light switch.
So having had this experience with period work now, Andy, would you go back? Is that something that you've got the bug for now, or
Um,
are you going to be filming from 1990s onwards for a little while?
yeah, it's one of those things, afterwards I was like, never again. Unless somebody gives me 10 times the budget, never again. Because it was fun, but it was hard. Um, but then I spoke to the distributors for putting Rumpelstiltskin out, and they were like, we've sold it around the world. How would you feel about doing Rumpelstiltskin too? So I was
Wow.
like, yeah, maybe. So I'm kind of coming up with some ideas at the moment for Rumpelstiltskin too. And obviously we're completely off book now because
Yeah,
the Brothers Grimm never wrote a Rumpelstiltskin too.
they
He
didn't. There
never
wasn't the same
reappeared.
hunger for sequels back in their era.
No, so generally, everybody dies at the end, or everybody lives happily ever after. That was the end of the story in Brothers Grimm world. But now you can't live happily ever after. You've got to
Uh,
find out what happens to you next.
yeah, you've at
Uh,
very least got to put a question mark at the end of that.
exactly, you've got to tease a, a sequel of some kind. So yeah, this was made with no intention of making a sequel, but he's a magical little goblin guy. He can do anything. So
He could just have a little. He could just need a little rest for a bit, and he could return. And I don't want to spoil this, but for everyone who is thinking of watching this, what I really liked about the Rumpelstiltskin story that you presented is that you kind of have the story of the book, but then you expand even beyond there already. So absolutely, for people who are big Rumpleheads that have followed this story for years, you will get beyond the end of the Grimm book already
yeah,
in this one.
yeah, I wanted to do that because for anyone who did know the story really well, that I wanted some surprises in there and some stuff that you hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
So you didn't just go, oh yeah, he's just done the story.
Yeah.
Um,
And giving nothing away, I think he took it in a really interesting direction.
Thank you. And but even with just doing the story, the actual story is like a page.
Yeah.
It's really short. And it just kind of goes, and then so and so did this, and then so and so did this. But it doesn't ever explain why
Yeah.
any of the characters do that. So that was the challenge really, and the kind of thing that kept, the creative part of my brain interested. Or you're telling, a story that, lots of people people know and it's been told before, but nobody ever explains why any of these characters do any of these things. So it was trying to come up with motivations and semi-realistic motivations why people might do these things. Obviously, we're still talking about goblins and straw into gold, so we're
Yeah.
not talking about absolute reality. Um, but yeah, still trying to make these people feel like real characters who would be motivated to do the stuff that the crazy things that happen.
Yeah, I would certainly, those those distributors are correct, Andy. I would turn up for a sequel if you're happy to put one
Yeah, and then
together.
we can take him, wherever. That's obviously the exciting thing about that is we have a character who we worked really hard on. Joss worked really hard on the performance. James, who did the costumes, Will, who did the prosthetics. We have a real kind of living, breathing character now. What can we do with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's
we
the
even talked
exciting
about
thing.
it on the episode, Andy, but now I have you with me. Rumpelstiltskin versus Punch when?
Um, I mean, I think they both need to be a little further along in their
Yeah.
respective
This is like
arcs. But
episode 4, right?
yeah, exactly. You need to establish them both with
After they
a
get back from
sequel
space, that is
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
can finally meet up.
Yeah, I do actually have a punch in space idea. But again, he can't go into space on part two.
Yeah.
You've got to build up. So yeah, I've got punch in various locations. Um, and I've actually got, so I've got these are ideas. We've not made them yet. So I've got various ideas for punch in various locations, and then punch a couple of historical ones for punch as well, actually,
There
like
you
punch
go. Pump
origins.
Origins. Punch
And then we go
Origins.
back to like how he started, and then obviously the timelines are converging then.
Yeah. See, this is
Um,
what I'm looking for now. Like, I think if the MCU has given us anything, it is a keen eye for Easter eggs. I will look forward to, a Mr. Punch on the side when we're when we're back in Rumpelstiltskin land or
yeah,
a Grimm's
little,
Fairy
little,
Tales book in Punch.
yeah, little pointers to saying that yeah, their paths will cross
Yeah.
at some point.
I mean, no need to spoil it for us now, but I'm going to be constantly thinking out, is it going to be like a Godzilla Kong situation where they punch for a bit but then are ultimately mates? Or is it going to be like a proper Freddy versus Jason where at first they're allied and then rifts begin to form? Who knows?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't trust either of them.
Yeah.
I think any alliance is going to be short-lived.
Yeah, they're both wrongins, really, in the
Yeah,
grand scheme of things.
yeah,
Well, brilliant, Andy. I think the one thing I want to make sure we absolutely cover, we know that we've been lucky enough to see it at festivals already, but the wait for other people to see Rumpelstiltskin in the comfort of their own homes is not that long, right? We're almost ready to come out.
yeah. So it's going to be out on all the streaming platforms on the 7th of April in the UK and 8th of April in the US.
Brilliant. So at time of release, everybody, that is not too far away. So set your calendars accordingly. We will obviously share the news when it is out as well. So follow all of our social feeds and everything while you're there. We will share it when it's out, and then get in there again. I can't say this enough. What we really love over here on the show is we like all types of horror film, but really passionate for independent filmmaking, particularly UK independent filmmaking, because let's be honest, it's where we live. So get behind this one, give it a watch, share your thoughts, and only through all of your collective action can we truly get this versus movie that we all deserve.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. I know we've talked previously, so we've already asked you the major questions of a horror hangout, which is who you would, what films you would have on, but I will give you a slightly different one then. You've talked about
Okay.
your producer head on, IP, all these other, and we live in a constant world where people are saying, "Oh, who's going to be the next to direct a new Nightmare on Elm Street film, whatever." Carte blanche, if I was to be able to say, tell you what, Andy, I have pulled a thorn out of out of Bob Iger's foot, and he said he'll buy me any IP in the world. What would you, what IP would you take to helm a reimagination of?
Um, I mean, I'd be very tempted with Freddie. Obviously, working with kind of the prosthetics on Rumpel and working with the kind of bad joke kills on Punch. You know, Freddie would be a very tempting one, but ultimately, free reign, I would
Yeah.
do Hellraiser
Wow. Andy Edwards
because, and I'll tell
Hellraiser.
you why, because that is such a rich world with so much potential. Think about where they went in number two. They go to hell and the Leviathan, and there's all this mythology. And then because of the budgets, they just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's almost a linear drop off, I think, in the Hellraiser series of films, whereas others, they're a bit more up and down. Um, and the new one, I like the new Cenobites, but they weren't in it and hardly anywhere near enough.
Yeah.
Um, Instead, there was another plot which was boring, and you were like, "No, put the Cenobites back."
No, we need to learn
Um,
more about this burglar, all right?
yeah, there was all this burglar stuff, and you're like, "I don't care. I just want to see the cool fucking Cenobite."
Yeah.
That's what people want to see. So I think that would be something. Just a world to play in, a sandbox to play in. Is something that Clive Barker is a genius and a madman, and he has come up with this mythology and these characters who can do anything. And yeah, that's something that I feel a world I would love to play in.
An excellent choice. Well made. In that case, the final question I have for you today is the very important one, which is if people are looking to follow and catch up, not just relying on us to tell them, where's the best place for people to follow you for the news on what you're working on, Rumpelstiltskin
Um,
or otherwise?
so my production company is Paranoid Android Films. So if you search Paranoid Android Films, I'm on that's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and even on TikTok now. I don't know how to use TikTok. I've
But
posted about
someone does.
4 videos, but it's something that obviously I need to kind of get my head round, especially with promotion of films. So yeah, Paranoid Android Films, yeah, that's where I'll be doing stuff. And I'm on Instagram as well, Andy Edwards filmmaker. So that's
Brilliant.
for stuff that I'm doing outside of Paranoid Android Films as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for everyone who has listened along with us. Thank you for Acast and Rusty Quill for hosting us, basically being our friends. And of course, thanks for Taj Easton for our wonderful theme music. This has been another Horror Hangout bonus episode, and we will see you all very soon. Bye for now, everybody. Bye.